Howdy, folks! You've arrived at Sampolesi's farm, the one-stop barnyard where we will separate the mud from the hay and get a clear look at pigmentary and pseudoexfoliation glaucoma. Giddy up! The name of the farm is Sampolesi's. Sampolesi's line is a pigmented line seen at the interior edge of Schwalbe's line on gonioscopy, which can show up in both pigmentary and pseudoexfoliation glaucoma, as pigment or debris gets carried to the drainage angle. Let the name of the farm be a symbol for this. Over on the left, you will notice these adorable pigs in their pen. Let these pigs represent pigmentary dispersion syndrome and subsequent pigmentary glaucoma, which represent a spectrum of the same disease. Notice how our cute piggies are playing in the mud. Let this mud be a symbol for the dark pigment released into the eye in this condition. In pigmentary glaucoma, iris defects occur due to the mechanical rubbing of the posterior iris with the lens zonules. These defects are typically mid-peripheral. Notice how these cute pigs are running wild in the mid-periphery of their pen. Let their location remind you that iris defects in pigment dispersion syndrome tend to occur in the mid-periphery. Look at those piglets run! As they dart around the mid-periphery of their pen, notice how they are kicking mud onto the fence. Let this dense mud on the fence symbolize dense trabecular meshwork pigmentation, which can be seen in both pigmentary and pseudoexfoliation glaucoma. However, the pigmentation is more dense and homogeneous in pigmentary glaucoma. This dense pigment clogs the outflow pathway, causing elevated intraocular pressure, which can lead to symptoms like blurry vision, halos around lights, and ocular discomfort, especially after physical exertion. This is a family farm, so it's a team effort to keep this business going. Take a look at one of the Sampolesi sons in the middle of the pig pen. Notice his glasses, a recurrent symbol in eye sketch for myopia. Notice how he's getting fatigued and burnt out shoveling all that mud. Pigmentary glaucoma typically affects young to middle-aged adults, often around age 30, and is more common in myopic males. Symptoms in pigmentary glaucoma often worsen with physical exertion. Let our myopic farmer in distress be a symbol for the worsening of symptoms with physical activity. Now notice his brother in the hammock next to the pig pen. See the shape of the hammock? It's rather concave. Patients with pigmentary glaucoma may have a concave iris configuration, which predisposes them to attacks during physical exertion. Dilation of the pupil during exercise causes the concave iris to bow backwards, increasing contact with the lens zonules and releasing more pigment into the eye. Let this concave hammock be a symbol for this important anatomic feature. Let's now take a look at the right side of the farm. Notice the X on the barn. Let this X symbolize pseudoexfoliation syndrome. This condition can also cause pigment in the trabecular meshwork, but the pigment tends to be patchy and irregular, mixed with flaky material. Notice the hay bale and hay balls rolling around on this side of the sketch. Let the hay be a symbol for the patchy, flaky material liberated in this condition. Unlike pigmentary glaucoma, pseudoexfoliation is not just an eye disease. It's a systemic disorder, and the exfoliative material can be found in other tissues of the body, like blood vessels and the heart. Notice the windmill blowing the hay balls around. Let this symbolize how this material is scattered everywhere. Unlike the pigs in pigmentary glaucoma, this side of the sketch has goats. Notice their gray color and long, scruffy beards. Unlike pigmentary glaucoma, which affects younger adults, pseudoexfoliation syndrome is typically seen in older adults, usually those aged 60 and older. Let the older appearance of these goats remind you of this older age group. As goats tend to do, notice how they're all sitting at the edges, or margins, of the barnyard. Pseudoexfoliation syndrome also presents with iris defects. However, unlike the mid-peripheral defects seen in pigmentary glaucoma, pseudoexfoliation presents with defects at the pupillary margin. Let these adventurous goats on the margins of the barnyard be a reminder of this distinction. To keep the goats out of places they're not supposed to be, notice how the farm door is kept closed with a giant padlock. Let this lock symbolize the LOXL1 gene, which is associated with pseudoexfoliation syndrome. This dysfunctional gene contributes to the abnormal production and accumulation of pseudoexfoliative fibrillar material in the eye and other tissues. Notice this cute goat jumping on the farm trampoline. Let this trampoline symbolize the intraocular lens, with the springs securing and suspending the trampoline representing the lens zonules. Notice how the windmill blows hay and debris onto the trampoline and its springs. This fibrillar material can form a ring around the lens capsule, sometimes described as a bull's eye pattern, due to its circular, concentric shape around the center of the lens. This characteristic sign can be observed on slit lamp exam. Oh no! Looks like our goat crashed through. Ouch! Poor goat friend. When pseudoexfoliative material accumulates on the zonules, the weakened zonules may no longer support the lens properly, leading to the risk of lens dislocation, especially during cataract surgery. In addition to these patients having poor dilation after eye drops, surgeons should take extra precautions regarding lens stabilization during surgery to prevent dislocation. Speaking of pseudoexfoliative cataracts, this name implies there is a true exfoliative cataract. True exfoliation syndrome is a rare disease seen in glassblowers, steelworkers, blacksmiths, and bakers. Excessive exposure to heat and infrared radiation can cause delamination of the anterior lens capsule. However, these patients are often asymptomatic. Let Mr. Sampolesi himself, in the back of the sketch, forging, heating, and shaping metal serve as a nod to true exfoliation syndrome. Lastly, notice Mrs. Sampolesi twisting and spinning wool into yarn using a giant spindle. Let this spindle represent a Krukenberg spindle, which is an eponym for the characteristic vertical pigmented line that forms on the corneal endothelium due to pigment dispersion. Although it can occur in both pigmentary and pseudoexfoliation syndrome, it's much more commonly associated with pigmentary glaucoma. Let's quickly summarize the findings in this farm-themed sketch. Pigmentary glaucoma is symbolized by the playful pigs in their pen, with the mud representing pigment release and iris defects occurring in the mid-periphery. On gonioscopy, a densely pigmented trabecular meshwork is common in pigmentary glaucoma. This condition occurs more in younger adults around age 30 and more likely to occur in myopic men, with ocular symptoms worsened during physical exertion. The concave hammock signifies the concave iris configuration, which can predispose patients to attacks. On the right side of the sketch, the X on the barn is a symbol for pseudoexfoliation glaucoma and is more likely to occur in older adults, age 60 and above, as represented by these bearded goats. Notice the patchy, flaky material symbolized by hay scattered by the windmill, a reminder that pseudoexfoliation syndrome is a systemic disease characterized by this fibrillar material being deposited throughout the body. In contrast to pigmentary glaucoma, a more patchy, irregular trabecular meshwork is more common in pseudoexfoliation glaucoma. Another contrast is the location of iris defects, which is around the pupillary margin, as represented by the goats on the barn roof margin or edges. The padlocked door symbolizes the LOXL1 gene, which is associated with this syndrome. The trampoline represents the intraocular lens. Remember the characteristic bull's eye sign seen on the lens capsule and the risk of lens dislocation during cataract surgery due to weakened zonules from deposition of the fibrillar material. Finally, true exfoliation syndrome is linked to glass blowing and metalworking, as seen by Mr. Sampolesi forging metal, while the Krukenberg spindle, as represented by Mrs. Sampolesi spinning wool, symbolizes the vertical line on the corneal endothelium due to pigment dispersion. you.